In this next tutorial I'm going to show you how to build a very simple smelting array, which a lot of people use. But first of all, let's talk about some numbers. One of the things you need to get used to in Factorio is the fact that things have production rates and speeds and productivity and all these sorts of complicated things. You can kind of get around them in the sense that you don't necessarily need to build everything to ratio and blah 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 blah, but you do need to get used to the concept that, for example, a mining drill, if we hover over it, as it does the maths for you, and as it shows there, it's going to produce 0.75 per second. There is maths behind that, but the basic point is that all of these mining drills are only going to produce 0.75 items per second. I've installed a mod so that I can note some of these down on screen, so it's easier to refer to. So 0.75 is the amount that each mining drill will produce. We also know that each belt can handle 15 items per second. That means we have a very simple calculation where we can divide one by the other. 20. Now, that may be different to the number you've seen a lot of people talk about, which is that it takes 30 mining drills to fill a yellow belt, a standard transport belt. And the reason for that is I am playing with the cheats enabled, and cheats mean that I have unlocked several levels of mining productivity, and that changes the number. And that's kind of the real point that I'm trying to get to, is that if you work on a 30 miners per basic transport belt, yellow transport belt, and do the maths from there, that's fine. But what you'll find is that as you do certain researches, as you put in, for example, we might put productivity modules into these. Each one holds 3. So if we put 3 productivity modules in, we'll see that it produces 0.68 per second, because productivity modules slow it down. So what you need to do is you need to be used to the concept of doing the math yourself. Now, you don't always have to be fully accurate, as I say, and it doesn't matter if you don't produce everything at ratio, but if your intention is to fill a yellow transport belt with iron ore so that you can produce a full transport belt of iron plate, those numbers will be dynamic based on where you are in the game and what researches you've done. Now, as it happens, we have 41 miners on this patch. They're not all fully accessing full material. I could tell that by simply taking a deconstruction planner and dragging over the lot. I'm not going to release, otherwise it will sort of mark them all for deconstruction. But as you can see, it says there are 41 miners. So we know that we can produce 2 full transport belts of material. But we are outputting 3 belts. Okay? So what do we do about that? Well, we can do balancing. But we can do balancing in a slightly different way to what you've probably seen before. Because what we can do is we can say, right, well, we know that we want to produce 2 belts, and we have 2 belts here that are almost equal. They have 30 miners on in total. That one has 16, and that one has 15. So they're so those are very, very close in the amount of production they're producing. Now, as it happens, 15, or 16 rather, is not quite enough to fill the transport belt. We would need 20. So what we can do is very, very simply take this transport belt and reverse it. Okay. Now, because it has an uneven number of miners on each side, you know, it's got 2, 4, 6 on that side, and 8 on that side and 2 on that side. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to sort of watch this together and have those 2 be on this side, so that it's a bit more even. That's just a nice easy fix. But then what we can do is we simply take this transport belt, use a splitter. I've put the power pole in the way, and saying that, just move those over, and then have those materials go down there and there. We've now balanced this out, and so it will produce basically 2 transport belts. Now, what we can also do is balance these together if we really want to. I will do that because I'm a habitual belt balancer. So what I'll do now is I'll take these over to where I want to actually smelt them, and so we'll pick up with the tutorial then. Okay, so I've brought over the iron. It's snaked all around here. One of the things I'm trying to do with these quick tutorials is make them fairly realistic to how you might actually be building. So for example, you've got an iron patch over here, and you're bringing the materials over to where you want to smelt them. You've also brought some coal up. As you can see, this coal is snaking around because we're using it in our boilers to make power. What are you wanting to do? You're wanting to produce a full belt of iron plate. Okay, and we've got, as it happens, 2 belts of iron plate here, but we're going to use the other one for something else. So we go back to the numbers again. In this case, we would be at a stage of the game where we're only using stone furnaces. Stone furnaces obviously require a burnable fuel, So that's why it's flashing that. Now as we hover over on this, we notice that it doesn't actually tell us the production rate. And that's because it can do multiple different recipes. So if you hover over it, you don't know what it's going to do. And in the base game, there are two sort of materials that you're going to be, or two speeds of material that you're going to be processing in stone furnaces, which are iron and copper, which operate at one speed, and stone, which operates at another. Now I say stone operates at a different speed. It's more that it uses twice as much material. So they have the same smelting time. So an iron plate takes 3.2 seconds to craft from one iron ore, but a stone brick takes 3.2 seconds from two pieces of stone. So in other words, it's sort of the ratio is half the rate for the iron and copper. Okay, so in order to get this to tell us the number and have a quick reference to it, we just need to grab a little bit of iron. You'll probably have some sat around is the thing with this, so you'll be able to see. But if we get it to produce some, we can see that it takes 0.31 seconds to produce a iron plate. Okay, so if we note that number down, so that takes 0.31 seconds to produce an iron plate, and we want to fill a belt which again holds 15 items. So again, we do the simple math, divide one by the other, and what we get is not a whole number. Okay, what you get is like 48 point something, so it's 48.3 I think it is, something like that. Now the reason for that, the fact that it gives a 48.3, is because it's doing some rounding. None of these numbers are exact. And what you actually need is just 48, because there is extra decimal places going on. And that's what I'm saying about getting used to using numbers, but not being totally reliant on them, because the number it gives you will not be the exact number. It's only going to show it to 2 decimal places. To get the exact number, you need to work in different numbers. Now, one of the ways of coping with that is to overproduce. So you could stick on, say, 50 miners, say 50 furnaces, but actually, yes. So what we need to do is we need to put 48. But that, of course, is the total to produce 15. What we actually need, because it's 2 sides of a belt for 15, 7.5 on each side, is 24. Okay, you'll have seen, if you've ever watched any of these tutorials before, you'll have seen that number mentioned as you need 48 to fill a yellow belt and 24 per side. But this is trying to explain roughly where those numbers come from, using stuff in the game and getting you used to the idea that that's how you kind of do Factorio. We need 48 smelters. Okay, now it doesn't really matter where we put them, but if we throw a few down, we can again use the trick of the deconstruction plans to see how many we've done. That's 15, so I don't know how many that is now. 22, so we want 23, 24. Okay, and we want the exact same thing on the other side of a belt. Now the way we're going to do this, there are different ways of arranging furnaces and the belts and all that sort of stuff, but I'm going to use one that a lot of people have used and you'll see all over the place. It is quite a nice compact way of doing it. Basically we want the output to come out of the middle, okay, and we want the input to go on the side. Now this is kind of opposite to my previous tutorial about in and out, but in this case it's a very static design that we're not going to be, we know 48 fills a belt, so we're not really going to be changing that. So yes, this is how many we need, and this is what we need. We then need to put on inserters. Now, it's easier to, you can do a very simple way of like spamming them in, is just hold the cursor and do that. But we also need to provide power to these inserters. So I don't like to put more power poles than I need. Okay, it's just a foible of me. So what I usually do is use like a 3 power pole block, as it were. I don't know about a better word for that. But basically, if we then repeat that pattern, that will avoid. Now we could use a repeating blueprint, but we're going to blueprint this whole thing, and I'll show you the repeating blueprint thing that I showed you in the last tutorial again. And there we go. 3 obviously divides nicely into 24 and 48. This is another little trick. Power poles. If you just hold the cursor, hold the left mouse button down, and just run over where you've got ghosts, it'll automatically place them, so it doesn't try and rearrange them. It's a very, very quick way of doing things. We then want the inserters, and as I say, you can just, if you just hold the button down, then you can put all of them in all at once, just by moving your cursor around. So it speeds things up a little bit. Obviously I've got a lot of inserters, so you're probably doing each furnace is going to be using 2 inserters, so that if you think about it, you've got 48 furnaces, so you're going to need 96 inserters just to do this. So these are quite material intensive, but once you've got them up and running, you're kind of good to go. Now, what we want is for each furnace to have access to iron ore and coal. And of course we've got those on separate belts, so we need to combine them somehow, but we also need to split it across both sides. So as I say, a little trick that a lot of people use is to do this. Okay, and then put the splitter like that. Now what that's doing, we'll take that belt out, but what that's, in fact, I think I need to move this slightly down. The classic Factorio thing of it being one tile down. But what it's doing is it will take an input here like this, and we can hop, skip and a jump this coal over onto the other side, like so. And now that splitter is evenly splitting its full contents belt between both of the belts that we want to do the smelting with. And then this splitter is evenly splitting the coal across them. Now you don't need very much coal at all, so a lot of the coal will just sit there, and you can actually feed lots and lots of different smelting arrays with one coal belt. In fact, to the extent that you'll probably not, one yellow coal belt will probably sort you for all the smelting you do in this way. But yes, it's very, very efficient from a coal point of view, and even more efficient when you get the next level of furnace up. Now we don't have power here, so I will bring some power over. And now you see our furnaces are kicking in. They're all grabbing material. And we will soon see, once they've done a cycle, obviously it takes 3.2 seconds for them to all cycle through a single piece of ore. And now we see we have a nice full belt of iron ore coming out. You will get tiny gaps due to inserter, like harmonics, basically, is the way I think of it. But you will sometimes get a few tiny little gaps, but don't worry about those. Back pressure usually sorts them out. So that's a very simple smelting array tip. But yeah, if you are wanting to produce a single belt of iron or copper plates, then this is the way to do it. For stone brick, you would need to either provide twice as much stone or use an array half as big, because as I say, it takes 2 stone to make 1 stone brick. So the maths changes. Literally, this becomes 0.62, and so your maths is 24. Other way around, sorry. That becomes 96 to fill a belt, basically. So yeah, so hopefully that made some sense. I did try and add some more flavour. The one thing I will do that is a little bit different to most of the tutorials on this is show you how to blueprint this and get it to tile. So as with the last time I did this, what we want to do, we'll actually take the actual stone furnace section, because I need to tweak this because it's not quite in the right place. But yeah, we'll take this part here. Okay, we will create a full blueprint out of that. So yeah, and now we could just hand place that so that it was where we wanted it to be. Maybe we want gaps in because, I don't know, future belts and what have you. But what we can do instead is edit this blueprint, use snap to grid, tell it to do it in a relative way, so not based on the absolute grid system. Now for this one, because we don't want it to overlap, we're good to go. Now what you can do is, if you really want to do a smaller array, which can be useful if you're just doing stone or something like that, then you can actually kind of shrink this down. So what you could do, so if you wanted to do like a smaller one, is this is our repeating unit. Okay, so we would snap that to grid, we'd say relative, and we're basically done because it doesn't need to overlap. But then that you could plop down wherever you wanted, and you could do, say you wanted to just do 24 furnaces, for stone, then you would do, so that's 3, that's sort of rather 6, rather 12, 18, 24, and you know you've got it. So that's another way of doing it, but generally speaking I'll use a full one like that, and then we just plop it down and we can put in as many as we want. We need to hold shift if there's anything in the way, so that it tells it to force build. So yeah, so that was a quick tutorial on how to build a basic stone furnace smelting array. If you want to see how to get the resources to fill this, then you'll need to click on the tutorial on screen now. Thanks for watching, I've been Trismegistus. This has been a quick tutorial for Factorio. Quick being a relative term.